the divine souls. I've been explaining to you the last couple of days about the three paths to God, because in order to be surrendered to God or to become surrendered to God, we have to follow a path. There has to be some means of becoming surrendered to God. And our scriptures tell us that all the paths and practices that exist can be put into three main categories: the path of Karm, the path of Jnana, and the path of Bhakti. In fact, there is no fourth path. There are only these three paths. Whatever paths exist in the world, they're all included in the path of Karm, path of Jnana, and path of Bhakti. I started off by explaining that if you look into our scriptures, you find differing views on the path of Karm. We're starting with the path of Karm. Jnana and Bhakti will come later. So we found that there's both praise and criticism for the path of good actions. In order to understand why this is so, I told you we have to understand about the four types of karma. They are called karma, vikarma, karma yoga, and karma sannyas. So yesterday I explained about karma and vikarma. Karma means good actions, vikarma means bad actions. In other words, if someone follows the do's and don'ts of the Vedas, they're doing karma, good karma. And if someone doesn't follow the do's and don'ts of the Vedas, then they're doing vikarma, bad actions. I went into some detail on what following these do's and don'ts of the Vedas would entail. I said there's nitya karma, actions that have to be performed on a daily basis, and those differ depending on what your role in society is, what your role in the family is, and what age you are. So it's very complex. In addition to that, there's naimittik karma, occasional ritual observances that happen throughout a person's life. Those also have to be observed. Then you have kamya karma, certain yajna which are performed for the fulfillment of any desire, and you have prayaschit karma, karma which must be performed in order to atone for our sins of this life, so that we don't have to receive the punishment in our next life. These four types of karma make up the path of good actions. I also explained to you that it's very difficult to follow this path because it's highly regulated and very strict. There's no give and take. What's in Vedas is the law. If you follow it, you're rewarded. If you don't, you're punished. What is the reward? Maximum reward is going to Swarg. And I explained to you that going to Swarg, or the celestial abodes, is not the same as attaining God, because God is beyond Swarg. Swarg is only part of this material existence. It's a higher plane than this physical one where we are here, but it's still not divine. So over there you don't find real happiness. Over there there's also jealousy, greed, further desire. Indro vanchati brahma padam. Even Indra, with all of his luxury and power, he's not satisfied. He sees that, oh, there are other levels higher than me, and he desires for those. Then what's the difference between you and him? He's got some higher level of enjoyment, that's it. Internally, you're both the same. You're both wanting more. You're both dissatisfied, you and Indra. Plus, there's this fact that we've all become Indra uncountable times before. So we became Indra for a limited period of time. We enjoyed that luxury of Indra's abode. We enjoyed the power of having that seat of Indra. And then we came back here. After becoming Indra, we may have been born as a dog or a cat or a worm. And then again, eventually get another chance as a human being. So when this is the maximum attainment you can get through the path of Karm, it seems like a great amount of effort to put in for a limited material attainment, which doesn't leave you any further ahead than where you were before. When you come back and you end up with another human birth, you're not further ahead having gone to Swarg. You went to Swarg on the basis of your accumulated good actions. You enjoyed all of those away, and then you came back here. But it's certainly better than Vikarma. Vikarma means if you ignore all these do's and don'ts of the Vedas and do whatever you want, just to fulfill your selfish desires, then you'll be punished. And the maximum punishment, Asurim yonimapanna mudha janmani janmani. Well, first of all, Gita says you may end up being born in the lower species for many, many lifetimes. There's more suffering in those lower life forms than there is as a human. Or, even more than that, Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanamatmana kama krodhastatha lobhas tasmade tatrayam tyajet. Gita says, you may have to go to Narak as well. Just like you get a temporary vacation in Swarg, you can get a temporary sentence in Narak, what you would call hell in English. It's not a place of eternal damnation. It's a place like where you get a temporary jail sentence. But it's not pleasant. You don't want to go there. However, we've been there uncountable times, just like we've been to Swarg uncountable times. We can't remember any of it. The amazing thing is, we're so attached to our bodies that even in Narak, we don't want to let go of that body we get over there. See, in Swarg, you get a celestial body with which to enjoy the celestial pleasures. In Narak, you get that kind of body over there that allows you to withstand the punishments you have to receive. Shankaracharya says, Angangalitam palitam mundam dashana vihinam jatam tundam grihitva jati vriddho yati grihitva dandam tadapi namunchat Tyasha pindam bhaj govindam govindam bhaj mudhamate. He says, even as a person ages and their hair falls out, their teeth fall out, they become weak and they need a cane to walk, their relatives may even start to spurn them. In other words, everything that they had before that they could enjoy is being taken from them. Yet, tadapi namunchatyasha pindam, that person still doesn't give up the hope of finding happiness from this body, even in their old age. Such is our attachment to this body. Trishna tu tarunayate. Shankaracharya says, our desires remain ever young. No matter how old our body gets, our desires remain strong as ever. In fact, they multiply with age. Unless a person diverts his mind towards God, the older we become, the more entrenched our attachments and desires get, and they keep multiplying. So it's amazing that even when we're in Narak, where you would imagine that we're suffering, and when you're suffering, every moment seems like a lot longer and you just want it to be over. Yet, if someone came to you and said, do you want me to kill you so you can be free from this body here in Narak and be born again on the earth planet? Oh, no, I don't want to die. Even over there, we have this attachment to our body. So anyway, we've been to Narak uncountable times, we've been to Swarg uncountable times, and both are temporary. Which is why Arjun when he was listening to Shri Krishna's reasoning why he should fight the war, he wasn't convinced initially, because Shri Krishna said to him, Hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshyase mahim tasmaduttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchaya. Arjun, it's your dharma to fight the war because you're actually on the right side. You're on the side of the law. You're defending the law. And your reason for fighting the war is to prevent Duryodhan from continuing to break the law and do wrong things. So it's in fact your duty to fight this war, and there's no other option at this point. So if you fight the war, it's your dharma, it's good karma, you'll be rewarded. You may go to Swarg, or if you're killed, you'll go directly to Swarg because you're killed in the line of duty. And if you win and you're not killed in battle, then you'll rule the earth. But if you don't fight the war, it's vikarma, and you'll have to go to Narak as a punishment for ignoring your duty. So Arjun was thinking, if I go to Narak, I suffer. If I win the war and I stay here, I just get more earthly pleasures. And I've already experienced all of that. There's nothing that great here. I never found real happiness. Shri Krishna has already told me that in Swarg, there's no real happiness either. So I'm like between a rock and a hard place. If I fight, I'm caught. If I don't fight, I'm caught. If I do my dharma, I perform my dharma, I'm rewarded. But what's the reward? Further material bondage. My reward sends me to Swarg and then back here to be born again. And if I ignore my dharma, I do vikarma, then I'm punished. And that punishment also keeps me under Maya. So either way, whether I'm rewarded or punished, I'm still under Maya. I still haven't attained perfect happiness. So he wasn't fully convinced. He wasn't satisfied. So we see that karma and vikarma, they're two sides of the same coin. Both keep you bound by Maya. Both give temporary results, either reward or punishment, and both end in you coming back here to Mrityulok. So that's why we have to learn about the third type of action, Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga looks exactly the same as karma from the outside. If someone were observing you physically, they would not be able to tell whether you were doing karma or karma yoga. Because the karma yogi is performing all the same good karma, all the same dharma that the karmi is. However, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha. Gita. See here, Shri Krishna explains, Arjuna, it's possible to perform your good actions with your mind attached to me. But then won't you still be bound by Maya? You still perform the good actions, so you'll be bound to receive the reward and go to Swarg and again come back here. Shri Krishna says, no, 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 no. Yasya nahang krito bhavo buddhir yasya na lipyate. If your mind is not attached in the action you're performing, then you're not bound by that action. So if your mind is attached in Krishna, he said, keep your mind in me every moment, Arjun, and fight the war. So if your mind is attached in Krishna, what do you receive as an outcome for that action? You receive the result of your attachment. We have never been given the results of our physical actions. Why are the results of the good karma binding? They're binding because of our attachment in those actions, not because of the actions themselves. So what's the difference between a karmi and a karma yogi? Where their mind is attached. That's it. Their physical actions are the same. The karmi is observing all the do's and don'ts of the Vedas, performing all of his family duties, duty to the society, Vedic rituals, Nitya Karm, Naimittik Karm, Prayashchit Karm. He's doing all of that. He's a karmi. The karma yogi is doing all of that. Both are doing all the good actions. But the karmi has his mind attached in those actions and wants the phal. He wants the fruit of those actions. Oh, I want to be rewarded with a better life in my next life. More worldly prosperity. Better house. Better family. Or I want to go to Swarg and really enjoy. Then our mind is attached in those actions. Thus, the action is binding. If we perform the very same action with our mind attached in Shri Krishna, that becomes Karma Yoga. Now, why is it called Karma Yoga? Because the word Yoga means to join your mind with God. Sanyogo Yoga Ityukto Jivamatma Paramatmano. Yagyavalkya says, what does Yoga mean? Yoga means Jivatma joining with Paramatma. Soul joining with God is Yoga. Yoga means Yuj Yoga, to join. So in Karma Yoga, what are we doing? We're physically doing all the good actions, but our mind is joined with God. It's attached to God. In other words, our goal is to attain God. The karmi, what's his goal? To attain more happiness in this world or in Swarg. Thus, he's attached in those good actions because the whole reason he's doing them is to get that worldly result. So, it's a binding action. But the karma yogi, what's his desire? To attain God. He's performing those good karma incidentally. I'm in this world. I have to live in the world. Let me do good karma physically. But I don't want the results of those karma. I want Krishna. I want God. So he keeps his mind attached to God, and God is the goal of his life, but he performs all of his duties and all of the good karma. That is a karma yogi. How is it possible to keep your mind attached in God while performing the family duties? Tulsidas ji comes right down to our level of thinking and says, Kami nari piyari jimi, lobhi priya jimi dam. He says, you know the attraction that a lustful person feels for a person that they're attracted to? You have to have that kind of desire for God. You know the greed that a miser has to accumulate more and more wealth and save more and more money? You have to have that greed to get more and more devotion to God, more and more bhakti for God. So we know what that feels like, right? We know what desire feels like. We know what lobh, greed feels like. So we should turn those feelings towards God. If we have such intense desire to attain God, then we can easily remember Him all the time. You would think that Arjuna was able to fight a war and remember Krishna every moment. Yes, he was. Then it must be possible for us to live our life, which is relatively calm compared to Arjuna fighting a war. We must be able to remember God all the time as well. We'll get into this, the practical aspects of remembering God every moment of the day, in more detail when I discuss the path of bhakti. So now you understand what is Karma Yoga. Doing good karma with your mind attached in God. It said, Man yar mein tan kar mein. You're driving a car, but you're thinking of your beloved. So you can do the same thing. You can be physically doing any action in the world, but still have your heart attached to God. Now the fourth kind, karma sannyas. The karma sannyasi has nothing to do with all the Vedic do's and don'ts. Or you can say he has a new set of do's and don'ts. The karma yogi and the karma sannyasi both have the same goal, to attain God. So for them, all the Vedic do's and don'ts actually get dissolved. Smartavyo satatam vishnur vismartavyo na jatu chit sarve vidhi nishedh. Padma Purana says, all the vidhi and nishedh of the Vedas, all of it, all the do's and don'ts, 80,000 mantras of the Karma Kand of the Vedas can be reduced to one do and one don't. Always remember God, that's the do. Never forget Him, that's the don't. That's it. If you're following that do and don't, you've done all the do's and don'ts. Forget about all of them and just do those. And forget about that one, meaning forget about God, don't remember God, then you can never do any of the do's and don'ts, or they're of very little value. But forget about all those thousands of do's and don'ts, vidhi nishedh, and just remember God all the time, never forgetting Him. You've accomplished everything. So in fact, the karma yogi, although he's performing the very same karma physically that the karmi is, remember I told you if you perform a yajna, you have to observe very strictly those 6 regulations as to the time, the place, the material that's being offered or given away in charity, the way the mantras are pronounced, the state of mind, the purity of the mind of the pandit performing the yajna, and the purity of the state of mind and behavior of the yajman, the karta, the one having the yajna performed. All of that is very strict. And this applies to all the different Vedic rituals, which makes it very difficult to observe. So the karmi who's doing those actions with the desire for the material outcome, he's held accountable for correctly following all of those rules. And if he doesn't, as you heard yesterday, he's punished instead of rewarded. He was trying to do a good action and he ends up getting punished because he wasn't able to follow those rules correctly. But the karma yogi performing the very same action who makes a mistake is not punished. Imagine. Why not? Isn't it unfair? No, it's not unfair. The karma yogi didn't want the phal of that good action in the first place. He only wants God. So he's not held accountable for if he makes any mistake in the performance of some ritual like that. It's not even kept track of for him. It's like he's physically doing the action, but the only thing God is watching is, where is your attachment? It's in me. Okay, he kept noting that your mind is attached in me. He didn't note any of the ritual performances he was doing, right or wrong. So the karma yogi is free from that fear of punishment when he's performing those good karma. The karma sannyasi also desires only God, but he renounces all performance of Vedic rituals. Sandhya vandana bhadramastu bhavate bhosnana tubhyam namah bho deva pitarascha tarpana vidhau nahang chamah chamyatam yatra kvapi nishadya yadavakulo tansasya kansadvishah smaram smaramagham harami tadalam manye ki manye name. a saint says, who's observing karma sannyas, he's Brahman, the saint, so he's supposed to be performing sandhya. He's supposed to be doing, his morning and evening worship. He's supposed to be making offerings to his ancestors. He's supposed to be making offerings to the celestial gods. He says, "Oh Devatas, please forgive me. Oh, my dear ancestors, please forgive me. I don't have time for any of this anymore." Not sandhya, not snan, not tarpan, nothing. Why don't you have time for it? I'm too busy remembering Krishna. My mind is just in Krishna all day long. I have no other work, nothing else I do but remember Krishna. So is he not punished for ignoring the injunctions of the Vedas to perform all of this nitya karma that a Brahmana is supposed to perform? No. He graduated. He's remembering Krishna all the time. He's well beyond the need to follow those Vedic injunctions. Those are like preliminary. Anyway, the karma sannyasi has his mind attached in God all the time and doesn't follow any of the Vedic injunctions. He just does devotion to God, just does bhakti. And the karma yogi does bhakti while also observing the Vedic injunctions. Bhakti means mind is attached to God. Simple definition of bhakti. So while doing bhakti, if one has no affiliation of observing all the Vedic do's and don'ts, he's doing karma sannyas. And if one does follow all of those Vedic good karma, but he's doing bhakti, his mind is attached in God, he is a karma yogi. Now, what is the outcome of karma yoga versus the outcome of karma sannyas? Shri Krishna says, "Sannyasa karma yogascha nishreyasa karavubhau." Both give you God realization. Both of them. Even though if you physically observe, it seems very different. The one, like the one I described, he's sitting saying, "Nope, I don't have time for any of those Vedic rituals, no good karma, nothing. I just remember Krishna all day. I eat a little, sleep a little." So physically, what he's doing looks very different than what the karma yogi is doing, performing all that Vedic karma I described to you. Social good actions, religious formalities, family duties, all of that. But that's only what's going on externally. Internally, the karma yogi and karma sannyasi are exactly the same. They both desire only God and they both remember only God. So they both attain God. They both become surrendered, one through karma yoga and one through karma sannyas. But you can say they both became surrendered through bhakti. Bhakti means attaching your mind to God. So they were both doing bhakti. It's just that while doing bhakti, one was involved in worldly activities, the karma yogi, and the other one, the karma sannyasi, while he was doing bhakti, he wasn't involved in any worldly activities. Not family, not society, nothing. Both get the exact same result. So then one would wonder, why go to the effort of being a karma yogi? Why not just be a karma sannyasi? Shri Krishna says in the Gita, "Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate." Just like Arjun was saying, then why can't I just go to the jungle? Why do you want me to fight this war? It's so terrible. I'm just going to go to the jungle and remember you. I don't need to remember you while fighting a war. Shri Krishna said, no, Arjun, I want you to become a karma yogi, not a karma sannyasi. Why? Because yadyada charati shreshthas tatta deve taro janah sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. People tend to imitate what they see. So if you're doing karma sannyas, what will people see? They will only see that you've ignored and left all the Vedic injunctions, all the duties, all the responsibilities. And if someone imitates that, they can't imitate your internal state. They can't tell by looking at you that you're thinking of God. All they see is you've abandoned everything. So if they imitate you, what will they become? Vikarmi. The one who abandons his worldly duties but doesn't have his mind attached in God is not a karma sannyasi. He's a vikarmi and he goes to narak. So if someone imitates the physical actions of a karma sannyasi, he becomes a vikarmi. If someone imitates the physical actions of a karma yogi, again, he can't imitate the inner part. He doesn't know about the inner attachment, but at least he becomes a karmi. He does good actions. So Arjun, for that reason, karma yoga is better than karma sannyas from the point of view of the society and how people will be affected by your behavior. So it means you're all better than me. Everybody can't imitate me and take sannyas. You're a better example of how to do devotion in the world than I am. So karma yoga and karma sannyas both give the same result based on the attachment of the mind. But karma yoga is better from this point of view that if someone imitates your physical behavior, they'll at least start performing good actions. And the person who is performing good actions is better than the person who's performing bad actions. Their mind is at least more clear and more likely to be influenced by spiritual teachings, and they're more likely to turn towards God than the one who's performing bad actions. So for this reason, karma yoga is better than karma sannyas. And the karma sannyasi also has to remember that physical renunciation of the world does not give any divine result. It's all about the attachment of the mind. Shri Krishna warns in the Gita, Karmendriyani sanyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyachara sa uchyate. He says the one who controls from outside, but from inside, like a sannyasi, renounces everything, but from inside he keeps dwelling upon the objects he used to get to enjoy. So he physically renounced things, but his mind is still thinking about those and enjoying them. Shri Krishna says he is vimudhatma. He's a fool and mithyachari. He's a hypocrite. So the fact is every sannyasi is somewhat of a hypocrite up until God realization. Until God realization, nobody's mind is 100% attached in God. Whatever amount it's not attached in God, it is attached in the world. So that to that percentage, every sannyasi is a hypocrite. 15%, 5%, 1%, 50%, depending upon his state of mind. Shri Krishna makes that point to make sure we understand that the physical renunciation does not give any result. Physical renunciation is fine if it simplifies your life, but you don't get any result just from renouncing physically. We have to have our mind attached in God and detached from the world. So now we see that karma and vikarma both only give material results. They keep us bound under Maya in the cycle of birth and death, rotating amongst the 8.4 million species of existence. And both karma yoga and karma sannyas lead to God realization, the attainment of ultimate bliss, and freedom from Maya, freedom from rebirth. So now we can understand why at some places the scriptures praise the path of karma and at other places they criticize the path of karma. that good karma which is performed without the mind attached in God is considered to be binding and leads to further material attachment. So that is criticized by the scriptures. But that good karma which is performed with the mind attached in God, that is praised. Veda Vyasji sums it up in 1/4 of a shlok in the Bhagavad. Yat karma tat karma hari tosham yat. Hari is Krishna, tosham, to please him. So what is good karma? Anything you do with the aim of pleasing Shri Krishna. You see, there's a verse in the Gita, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Offer all of your actions to Shri Krishna. So like I was saying, the karmi, the one who's at least doing good actions, he's not doing bad actions, he can start offering those actions to Shri Krishna, then he becomes a karma yogi. So how do you offer those actions? You have to perform the action with the intention of pleasing Shri Krishna. That's it. Which means you have to remember him at the time of the action. How can you intend to perform the action to please him if you're not thinking of him? As soon as you have that intention, you are thinking of him. So true good actions are those actions performed to please Shri Krishna, and all other actions are binding, no matter how good they are. Once some Brahmins were performing a yajna, some Brahmins from Mathura, and Shri Krishna was out not far from where they were having this big yajna with his friends grazing the cows, and they were all hungry. Shri Krishna said to his friends, we're so hungry, I'm so hungry. There's some Brahmins having a yajna not far from here. Why don't you go and tell them, take my name, he told them. Tell them I'm here and I'm hungry, and can they spare some of their food for all of us to eat? So Krishna's young friends, they went, they approached very respectfully, and they were completely ignored. Those Brahmins were thinking, what are these little kids doing coming here talking about Kanua's hungry, Kanhaiya's hungry? We're doing a yajna here with all this food we have. It has to be offered properly to Bhagwan with the proper mantra at the right time. So they completely ignored them, scolded them, sent them away. So they came back to Shri Krishna, and Shri Krishna said, if you try something and you fail the first time, don't give up. Try again. This time he sent them back to talk to the wives of those Brahmins. Now the wives of those Brahmins had been hearing about the Leelas of Shri Krishna for several years now, and they had a desire in their heart for many, many days to get the darshan of Shri Krishna. So Shri Krishna knew this, that's why he arranged this whole Leela. So those boys went and they approached the wives of the Brahmins. And as soon as they heard Shri Krishna's name, Krishna's hungry? He's nearby? Oh, they just forgot everything and they grabbed all the food that was meant to be offered in that yajna, and they started heading out, and their husbands were saying, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? And their brothers and in-laws, everybody was trying to stop them, and they just ran to Shri Krishna. And they offered that food, and Shri Krishna and the Gwalbals partook of that, and they got to have darshan of Shri Krishna. Then they were worried when Shri Krishna said, okay, you've had darshan, now it's time for you to go back. They were so happy having seen Shri Krishna, and now the fear. For one, we're leaving you, and for two, we have to go back to our family. Are they going to accept us back? Do you know what we just had to do in order to get past them? Shri Krishna said, you don't worry. Anyone who surrenders to me, the whole world does their vandana. So they went back, no one said anything. After the yajna was completed, then those Brahmins, their husbands, they came to their senses. And they said, Dhig janmanastri vrid vidyam, dhig bratam, dhig bahugyatam, dhig kulam, dhig kriyadaksham, vimukhaye tvadhokshaje. They said, shame on us. Look at our wives. Our wives don't have the Vedic education that we have, which we have such pride in, that we're educated in the Vedas, we're Sanskrit scholars. They have never done vrat like we're doing. They have never performed this type of yajna like we're doing. We've done all these great Vedic karm. We're so highly respected. We had such a high birth and such a noble family. They said, shame on all of that. Shame on our high birth. Shame on our noble family. Shame on our Vedic learning. Shame on all of our rituals that we've performed. Why? Because we did all of that having turned our back away from Shri Krishna, who himself is the origin of all of that and the ultimate reason that we're performing all of that. He's the ultimate goal. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramakha. All of those Vedic rituals are only to please Shri Krishna, and he is right here asking us for something. And we spurned him in order to finish our physical yajna. They said, shame on us. And look at our wives. They're much higher than we are. Prahlad ji says, Vipradvishad gunayuta daravindanabha Padaravinda vimukha chvapacham varishtham. He says that a Brahman with all 12 great qualities, who has his mind turned away from Shri Krishna, take that individual on one side who would be so highly respected due to his learning and his position and his high birth, take him on one side, and on the other side, take a person who's scorned by the society, who is like someone that people think is very low. No wealth, no learning, no nice clothes, doesn't know how to talk properly. Nothing that people generally appreciate. No good looks, no intelligence, none of that. Performing some menial tasks to get by and make a living. Take that person on one side and take that Brahman on the other side, but the Brahman doesn't have bhakti for Shri Krishna, and this other individual does. Prahlad ji says this other individual is much higher than that Brahman. Bhagati hina viranchi kina hoi sab jivahi mohi sam priya soi Bhagativant ati nichahu prani mohi prana priya asimam bani. Bhagwan Ram says, even if Brahma were devoid of my bhakti, he would be no more dear to me than any other soul. But even the lowest of all beings, if he has bhakti for me in my heart, I consider him to be like my own life. That is my promise, asimam bani. So you see, the one who is praised in our scriptures is the one who has bhakti for God. Our mind should be attached to him because we desire him. So we develop love for him. This is bhakti. Anyone who has that has everything. And the one who has everything else but doesn't have that has nothing. Vedavyas ji goes to the point of saying in Padma Puran, Man nimittam kritam papam madharmaya cha kalpate mamanadritya dharmopi. syan mat prabhavatah. Dharmo papam syan mat prabhavatah. He says, if you do pap, it can become dharma. And if you do dharma, it can become pap. Again, remember the definition of pap and dharma, or punya. Punya or dharma means following the injunctions of the Vedas. The definition of pap is do the opposite of what the Vedas tell you is right to do. He says, if you do pap, if you ignore what the Vedas are saying, but man nimittam, you do it for me, it becomes punya. For example, the wives of those Brahmins, when they didn't listen to their in-laws, their older brothers, their husbands, what were they doing? Ignoring the rules of the Vedas. But why did they do it? To run to Shri Krishna. So Shri Krishna said that becomes dharma, not pap. And in reverse, dharma can become pap. In other words, you can observe all the teachings of the Vedas, all the do's and don'ts of the Vedas, but it becomes pap. And here you have to understand the definition of pap. Pap means anything that keeps you from God. Anything that increases your worldly attachment. So in that way, punya and pap are the same. What is punya? You do good action, you receive the results of that, which is binding. So punya is also pap from this definition of Veda Vyas. In Mundakopanishad it says, Yada pashyah pashyate rukma varnam kartaramisham purusham brahma yonim tada vidvan punya pape vidhuya niranjana paramam samyamupaiti. The moment an individual gets the divine vision of God, all of his pap and punya are vidhuya. They're purified, washed away. And he becomes like God. Samyamupayiti. What Ved is saying is punya is something that also has to be washed away. Even your punya has to be purified. It means punya is the same as pap from this point of view, that both are binding. So imagine someone is forgetting Shri Krishna in order to perform all the Vedic karma, all the good actions, like those Brahmins doing that yajna. Their yajna became pap the moment they turned away from Shri Krishna. And they think, oh, we're doing good actions, we're doing punya. No, they were doing pure pap. So you understand now some of the subtleties of karma. Karma, vikarma, karma yoga, karma sannyas. And how our scriptures say that good actions performed without the mind attached to God, they have very little value. They're binding. So they're, from that point of view, no better than a sin. Dharma swanushtita punsam vishvaksena katha suya not padayed yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. Bhagavatam. All the best good actions following the highest dharma, if after doing all of that, love for God isn't born in a person's heart, then shrama eva hi kevalam. All he did was labor. He didn't get any good result out of it. Jap tap niyam yoga nij dharma shruti sambhavanana shubha karma agam nigam puranyaneka ज्ञान दया दम तीरथ मज्जन, जहाँ लगी धर्म कहे श्रुति सज्जन, आगम निगम पुराण अनेका, पढ़े सुने कर फल प्रभु एका, तव पद पंकज प्रीति निरंतर, सब साधन कर यह फल सुंदर, जहाँ लगी साधन वेद बखानी, सब कर फल हरि भगति भवानी. These verses from Ramayana are saying that the true reason for all of these good karma is only to lead a person towards God. If having performed all of those good karma, you don't develop love for God in your heart, then it was all vyarth, it was all useless. Because the true reason for doing all of that is to develop bhakti in your heart for Shri Krishna, for Shri Ram. Thus Tulsidas ji says, So sab karma dharma jari jau, jahan Ram pad pankaj bhau. That karma, that dharma which is bereft, the person performing it is bereft of love for the lotus feet of Shri Ram, then that karma and dharma can be burnt. It's of no use. Such strong words by Tulsidas ji. So now you can understand, you have the knowledge to be able to understand those confusing examples that I gave you from the lives of saints described in our scriptures. In other words, the gopis, Prahlad ji, Lakshman, also Sita. I gave you some examples where they appeared to be defying the teachings of the Vedas, but there was a good reason behind it. And tomorrow I'll start from this point where we'll apply this knowledge that I gave you and we'll understand these seemingly confusing actions of these divine personalities. And I'll remove a couple of other questions regarding the path of karma as well. And then we'll move on to the path of Gyan and Bhakti. Boliye Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki.